If you've ever had your heart broken by someone who looked you in the eyes and promised they had changed, then this story is going to stay with you until the very end. I caught my wife cheating once, and against my better judgment, I gave our marriage another chance. I believed every apology, every promise, and every tear. But during what was supposed to be the vacation that saved our relationship, I accidentally discovered she had never stopped talking to the other man. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't even confront her. Instead, I made one tiny move that left her trapped inside her own lies for the next 24 hours. And watching her silently panic became the moment I knew my marriage was already over. Before we get into today's story, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, if you caught your partner cheating, would you confront them immediately, or would you stay calm and gather every piece of evidence first? Now let's begin. People always say that trust is fragile. Once it's broken, you can try to rebuild it, but it never feels exactly the same again. I used to think that was just another cliché people repeated after bad relationships. Then it happened to me, and I realized those words weren't dramatic enough. Trust doesn't just crack. It shatters into thousands of tiny pieces, and no matter how carefully you try to put them back together, you can still feel every sharp edge. When I married my wife, I truly believed she was the person I'd spend the rest of my life with. We had plans, routines, inside jokes, and dreams about growing old together. Like every married couple, we had arguments about little things. Sometimes it was money. Sometimes it was work. Sometimes it was deciding where to spend Christmas. Nothing unusual. Nothing that ever made me question whether we belonged together. Then, just before the world shut down because of COVID, everything changed. I found out she was having an affair with one of her coworkers. Even now, I can remember exactly how it felt. My stomach twisted into knots so tight I thought I was going to be sick. My hands shook so badly that I almost dropped my phone while reading the messages. My brain kept searching for another explanation. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was old. Maybe someone else had sent the texts, but there was no misunderstanding. The conversations were intimate. They flirted openly. They talked like to people who had been hiding a relationship for far longer than I wanted to believe. When I confronted her, she broke down crying almost immediately. She swore it was over. She said it had been the biggest mistake of her life. She promised she'd never speak to him again. She begged me not to throw away everything we'd built together. Then the pandemic arrived. The timing couldn't have been stranger. Instead of separating and figuring out what came next, we suddenly found ourselves trapped inside the same house while the entire world locked down around us. At first, every day felt unbearable. Every notification on her phone made my heart race. Every time she smiled while looking at a screen, I wondered who she was talking to. Every late-night trip to another room filled my head with questions I never wanted to ask. Living with someone after they've betrayed you is one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. You don't just lose trust, you lose peace. But over time, something unexpected happened. We talked more than we had in years. Without restaurants, vacations, or distractions. We were forced to face each other every single day. She admitted she'd taken me for granted. She apologized over and over again. She agreed to counseling. She answered questions I'd been carrying around for weeks. Slowly, almost painfully slowly, life began to resemble something normal. Again, we cooked dinner together, watched movies, played board games, went for a long evening walks when restrictions allowed. Months passed. The constant knot in my stomach finally began to loosen. I still had doubts, but they weren't consuming every waking moment anymore. For the first time since discovering the affair, I allowed myself to believe something I never thought I'd believe. Again, maybe people really can change. Maybe our marriage deserved another chance. Maybe we were actually going to survive this. Looking back now, I realize hope can sometimes be just as dangerous as denial. After nearly 2 years of rebuilding our relationship, we decided to celebrate. We booked a vacation to Hawaii. It wasn't just another holiday to us. It represented a fresh start, a chance to leave all the pain behind. The moment we stepped off the plane, it felt like paradise. The warm ocean breeze, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, the smell of tropical flowers filling the air. For the first few days, everything felt perfect. We explored beaches with crystal clear water. We watched breathtaking sunsets together. We laughed more than we had in years. We ate incredible food, took hundreds of pictures, and talked about planning another trip someday. I remember lying on the beach one afternoon thinking maybe we'd actually made it. Maybe all those sleepless nights had been worth it. Maybe this was the beginning of the rest of our lives. It's incredible how quickly one moment can destroy years of hope. Our vacation was coming to an end, and we were getting ready for our flight home because COVID travel restrictions were still in place. We needed to upload our vaccination documents before boarding. My wife's vaccine passport happened to be saved on her phone. Mine was already finished. She was in the shower when I picked up her phone from the bedside table. I wasn't checking messages. I wasn't spying. I wasn't trying to catch her. I had one simple job: open the document, upload the passport. Put the phone back down. That was it. At least, that was the plan. As I unlocked the screen and searched for the document, a notification appeared across the top of the phone. It disappeared almost instantly. But I didn't need more than a second. I recognized the name immediately. The affair partner. My entire body froze. My heartbeat slammed against my chest. The room suddenly felt silent, even though I could still hear the shower running in the background. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe it was an old notification. Maybe he'd reacted to something months ago. Maybe I already knew I was lying to myself. With trembling fingers, I opened the messages, and the second I read the first new conversation, I realized our marriage had never actually been repaired at all. I wish I could tell you I closed the phone immediately. I wish I could tell you I respected her privacy, uploaded the vaccine passport, and pretended I never saw that notification. But after everything we'd already been through, I couldn't ignore it. I opened the conversation. The very first message destroyed every ounce of hope I'd spent the last 2 years rebuilding. They hadn't stopped talking. Not for a week, not for a month, not even for a little while. They had been texting the entire time. Some conversations were harmless on the surface, talking about work, complaining about coworkers, sharing memes and inside jokes. But then the tone would change. Compliments turned into flirting. Flirting turned into late-night conversations. Late-night conversations turned into messages that no married person should ever be sending someone who wasn't their spouse. Every message felt like another brick being placed on my chest. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred for a moment as I continued scrolling. The worst part wasn't even reading what they were saying. The worst part was realizing she'd lied to my face. Every single day since I first caught her. Every apology. Every promise. Every counseling session. Every time she looked into my eyes and told me she loved me. Every single one of them suddenly felt fake. I slowly locked the phone and stared out the hotel window outside. Hawaii looked exactly the way travel brochures promised. Bright blue water, palm trees swaying in the breeze, tourists laughing by the pool, children running across the beach. It was paradise. Inside that hotel room, my marriage quietly died. Oddly enough, I didn't cry, not this time. The first affair had broken me emotionally. This discovery did something completely different. It made me calm. The pain was still there. It was just buried underneath absolute certainty. There would be no more second chances, no more therapy, no more trying to fix Someone who clearly didn't want to be fixed. I was finished, but I also knew something else. If I confronted her right there in Hawaii, I'd spend the next 12 hours trapped on an airplane beside someone who would lie, cry, blame me, and somehow try to become the victim. I wasn't interested in another performance. I wanted facts. I wanted proof. I wanted to leave on my own terms. Then an idea popped into my head. It was so simple I almost laughed. I reopened the conversation, without hesitating. I tapped delete conversation. The entire text thread disappeared. Then I opened her contacts. Found his number. Pressed block. Done. Less than 30 seconds. That was all it took. I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it, finished uploading the vaccine passport, then walked out onto the balcony with a cup of coffee as if nothing had happened. A few minutes later, she came out of the bathroom. Her hair was still wet. She smiled at me. Everything ready? Yeah, I replied without looking up from my coffee. We're all set. She smiled. Perfect. For the first time in our marriage, I lied without feeling guilty. Because I already knew something she didn't. Sooner or later she was going to look for that conversation. And when she did, she'd have a problem. If she asked me why it was gone, she'd be admitting she was still talking to him. If she stayed quiet, she'd have no way of contacting him. Either way, she was trapped. Watching the next 24 hours unfold was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. At breakfast the following morning, she picked up her phone while we waited for our food. She unlocked it. Scrolled. Stopped. Her forehead wrinkled. She locked the screen a few seconds. Later she unlocked it again. This time she searched faster. Her eyes darted back and forth. Then she casually glanced at me. I was pretending to read the menu. She quickly looked away. Our breakfast arrived. Normally she'd be taking pictures of the food before eating. Instead she barely touched it. Every few minutes, she'd unlock her phone again, search. Refresh. Search. Again. Then lock it. She excused herself to the restroom halfway through breakfast. She took her phone with her. Nearly 15 minutes passed before she came back. Her smile was gone. She looked pale. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost the rest of the day followed the exact same pattern. Every time we stopped walking, she'd pull out her phone. Every notification made her jump. Every vibration made her instantly grab it. Every time it wasn't him, her shoulders dropped a little lower. She couldn't enjoy the beaches. She couldn't enjoy the shopping. She couldn't even enjoy our final dinner together. Her attention never left that screen. The funniest part was that she couldn't ask me a single question, not one, because the only way she'd know something had changed was if she admitted she was looking for him, and she couldn't risk doing that. So she stayed silent. The silence became torture. Whenever I caught her looking at me, she'd quickly look away. It was obvious she was trying to figure out whether I knew. Did I accidentally delete it? Did I see the messages? Did someone else contact him? Had he blocked her? She had hundreds of questions, and absolutely no safe way to ask them. For once, she was the one living with uncertainty. For once, she was the one wondering what someone else knew. For once, she was the one trapped inside a lie. That flight home felt longer than any flight I'd ever taken. She barely spoke. She kept pretending to watch movies she clearly wasn't paying attention to. Every half hour she'd secretly unlock her phone beneath the airline blanket and search. Again. Nothing. No messages. No replies. No way to contact him. By the time we landed, she looked exhausted. Not from traveling. From fear. She knew something had happened. She just didn't know how much I knew, and I planned to keep it that way for just a few more days. The hardest part wasn't pretending everything was normal. The hardest part was acting like I still cared whether she was telling me the truth. For the next 3 days, I didn't bring up Hawaii. I didn't mention her phone. I didn't ask about the missing messages. I simply watched. From the outside, we looked like any ordinary couple settling back into normal life after a vacation. We unpacked our suitcases, did laundry, went grocery shopping, and talked about work schedules. We even ordered takeout one night and watched a movie together. But beneath that ordinary routine, everything had changed. Every time her phone buzzed, she'd glance at it almost instantly. Every few minutes she'd unlock it, scroll through different apps, then quietly put it back down. Sometimes she'd stare at me for a second longer than usual, almost like she was trying to read my face. She knew something had happened. She just didn't know what, and the uncertainty was slowly consuming her. Meanwhile, I wasn't wasting my time wondering if she'd confess. I already knew she wouldn't. Instead, I spent those 3 days preparing for the end of my marriage. I opened a separate bank account. I gathered financial records. I copied important documents. I made sure everything valuable to me was somewhere safe. Then I went back to the evidence. Deleting one conversation hadn't erased the affair. It had only erased the easiest way for her to contact him. The more I searched, the more I found. Hidden messaging apps, archived conversations, old email accounts, private folders. She'd become incredibly skilled at hiding the predatory relationship, and every new discovery confirmed the same painful truth. She had never stopped cheating. She had simply gotten better at lying. Oddly enough, those discoveries didn't hurt me the way I expected. The pain had already reached its limit back in Hawaii. Now I wasn't searching for closure. I was documenting reality. Each screenshot became another piece of evidence. Another reminder that trusting her again had been a mistake. By the end of the 3rd day, I had everything I needed, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted freedom. That evening, after dinner, I asked if we could talk. She looked nervous immediately. I noticed it before she'd even said a word. Her shoulders stiffened. She swallowed hard. She knew this conversation had been coming. She just didn't know what. I knew. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten hundreds of meals together. The same table where we'd planned vacations, birthdays, and anniversaries. Now it was where our marriage would end. I quietly placed my phone on the table. Then I opened the first screenshot. I slid it toward her. She looked down. Her face instantly lost its color. Without saying anything, I opened the second screenshot, then the third, then the fourth. Hidden conversations, archived messages, emails. Every promise she'd broken, every lie she'd told. She never denied any of it. She couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. After nearly a minute of complete silence, she whispered the words I think every unfaithful partner says when they're finally caught. I can explain. I calmly shook my head. No. Tears immediately filled her eyes. It wasn't what it looks like. I was confused. I was going to end it. I didn't know how. Every excuse sounded painfully familiar. I'd heard almost the exact same speech years earlier, when I first discovered the affair. Only this time, there was nothing left to save. I didn't interrupt her. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I simply let her talk until she ran out of explanations. When the room finally became quiet again, I looked her in the eyes and said the only sentence that mattered, "I'm leaving." She stared at me in disbelief. "I'll change. You already promised that. We can go back to counseling." "We already did. Please don't throw this away." I looked around the house for a moment, then back at her. "You threw it away a long time ago." She started crying harder, real tears. The kind that shake your shoulders. Months earlier, those tears would have broken me. Now, I felt nothing. Not hatred, not satisfaction, not anger, just peace. I stood up, picked up my bag, walked toward the front door. Behind me, I heard her call my name. Then she begged me to stay. I kept walking. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I simply closed it behind me. That was the end of our marriage. People often ask me what the best revenge was. Was it exposing her? Was it catching her? Was it leaving? Honestly, no. The most satisfying moment happened in that hotel room in Hawaii. Deleting one conversation, blocking one phone number, then watching guilt trap her inside her own lies for an entire day. She couldn't accuse me without exposing herself. She couldn't ask questions without admitting she was still talking to him. She spent 24 hours wondering exactly what I knew. And for the first time since her affair began, she experienced the same uncertainty she'd forced me to live with. That tiny moment of silent panic said more than any screaming match ever could. Today, she's simply part of my past. I don't hate her anymore. I don't think about her every day. I've moved on with my life. I'm happier than I've been in years. Looking back, I learned something important. The loudest revenge isn't always the most satisfying. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm while everyone expects you to explode. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting. Sometimes walking away with your dignity intact hurts the other person far more than any argument ever could. She thought she could keep living two separate lives forever. She was wrong, and the moment she realized the affair partner had disappeared from her phone, she knew her lies were finally catching up with her. She just didn't know how close the end really was. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe for more Reddit revenge stories every week. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you discovered your spouse was secretly texting their affair partner during your dream vacation? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Reddit revenge story.